Welcome to our candidate forum. Tonight we're going to be hearing from, I don't want to stand. We're hearing from 6 of our... We're welcoming 6 of our candidates for Oregon's 2nd Congressional District. And I want to thank my dear friends, Kathy Schultz and Roger Nichols, who are going to be my moderators. And we are going to be, we're just asking that those that want to take a picture or film it may do so. We are making a video of the event that will be available and posted on our website, the Hood River Democrats. And I want to thank my friend Serena Smith from Wasco County Democrats. She coordinated this event with me. And so I'm going to hand over the program to my moderators, and thank you for coming.
Okay, let's do it. Well, welcome to tonight. I'm glad to see so many people out who are engaged in the civic process. This is the way it ought to be. You want to find out now. I am Roger Nichols. I'm news director for Gorge Country Media. We operate 4 local radio stations licensed to Golden Dale and to the Dalles. Doing tonight by Captain Schwartz, retired nurse, and it says here, community rebel rouser. That's what she is known by. Tonight's event is sponsored by the Hood River and Wasco County Democratic Party organizations, and so far 7 candidates have filed for nomination to represent the party in the 2nd Congressional District, which covers Eastern Oregon, as you probably know. 6 of them are here tonight will compete in the primary next May 15th to be the party standard bearer in the election that comes just a year and 2 days from now, November 6th. 2018. And this group, by the way, they've taken the show on the road. They're pros here, so we're expecting a pro result from everybody. No expectations here. Here's how we're going to work it tonight. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement. Now, we drew cards to see who was going to start. The way we're going to do is we're going to start at this end and move down. Each person is going to be able to have a 2-minute opening statement. Then we're going to have 7 questions. And they're all going to be the same. We're not going to take anything from the audience tonight. This is not a debate. We're not going to talk to each other. We're just going to answer the 7 questions we have devised. 2 of them are about health, 2 of them about immigration, 2 about federal land management, and 1 sneaker surprise question that they don't know about to test their ability to respond on the spot. Now, we should note, and by the way, at the conclusion, each candidate will have 1 minute to do a final closing statement, tap dance, whatever seems to work for them. We should note, we have assumed that as Democrats, all the candidates generally adhere to the party's platform on all the current issues, and rather than having each candidate or a candidate reiterate the party's blanket, everybody else saying me too, which is uninformative and boring, we're trying to devise the questions in such a way as to encourage the differences between the candidates, because every person has a subtle nuance different in the way they interpret politics, and we certainly hope that there's enough of it that you can differentiate among the candidates and make a good choice when the time comes next May. To help them focus on priorities, we were suggested to them, and I would suggest to you, that at each question, we want each candidate to assume they have been elected. They've been appointed to the appropriate committee. They're in the room where the legislation writing is taking place. We want to know what aspects, what points, what policy points they're going to fight the hardest for. So we're hoping that they will be able to make statements for that. And we do have a timer. We'll sit in the front. Brendan's going to do our timing for us. She will give a signal at 30 seconds to go, and at 10 seconds to go. A ding will sound at the end of that time. Let's see if we can hear that there. Now, you may not be able to hear it, but the candidates will be able to hear that, I hope. You all hear that okay? All right. You know, that would be fun, too, with bong on the cakes, but Steve is a little protective of his cakes. He spent a lot of money on buying them, So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's introduce Jamie, our starter. You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the Wasco and the Hood River Dems for hosting this forum.
My name is Jamie McLeod Skinner, and I would like to represent you all in Congress. My childhood was mostly rural. I was born in Wisconsin, like Wayne Morris, and also like him, he take a bipartisan approach on many issues. I spent time in East Africa as a child and finished up high school in Southern Oregon, where my high school track record still stands. I come from a multi-generational family throughout the district in Southern Central and Eastern Oregon. My wife hails from a family that's been ranching in Eastern Oregon for over 100 years. My professional experience includes working in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. As staff management and a policymaker, I have elected experience, which I did concurrently while I was working. I worked professionally in the district, in other states, and also internationally. My professional focus has been largely on water, where I've designed water and sanitation systems, I've developed water policy, I've been responsible for regulatory compliance and the public review process for regional water agencies serving both urban and rural areas similar to our district. And I worked on the climate basin adjudication case. I'm running because I believe we can do better and can have better representation in Washington. My priorities include jobs, healthcare, the environment, and that's air, water, and climate, which we'll touch on a bit later, education, and veterans. I'm also passionately committed to social justice and have a career doing that. My international work and commitment to veterans includes my experience working in pre- and post-war Bosnia and Kosovo, where I worked alongside our military to secure the peace. While I myself did not serve in uniform, I come out as a young adult and could not, I have a profound appreciation of what and respect for our veterans. And just lastly, I guess land by saying, those of you who missed the game last night, the Newford Rangers dominated and are on to the playoffs.
Hello, I'm Ross Wardhouse. Who's ready to get ball in the booth? How about it? Let's hear it. Get ball in the booth. The big fact of the matter is we need to win 50% of the non-affiliated voters and 20% of the Republican voters. Now, in order to do this, we need to focus on 3 points. One first is affordable health care. And we can get there by cutting the middleman. The middleman is health insurance. And then we reduce pricing for doctors and prescriptions. And that way we get the pricing down. So we get the price per capita from $10,000 down to $5,000 by able to do that. The second point is we need jobs through infrastructure programs. And around this area, we can look at programs that we could do like the rebuilding of the Hood River Bridge. Who would like to see that? And then we could look at maintenance program on the Bridge of the Gods. Then locally, we could look at waterworks programs like the Dog River pipeline, replacing that sucker. And then we could look at helping Mosier with their commingling wells. So there's a lot of jobs that we can do right here locally. On a regional level, we could look at bringing broadband and electrical grids to the rural communities. What this will do, this will foster the gig economy and also provide passive income for ranchers and farmers. What they can do is lease out their land and have solar farming and generate 20 grand worth of passive income by regulating or giving 40 acres over to the lease. So by doing those programs, we can, 10 seconds, okay. So that's my plan, and I appreciate you guys' support, and thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Tim White. I'm from Bend. I'm originally from Indianapolis. I attended school at Indiana University where I earned a degree in economics and an MBA. After that, I went to work for Chrysler Corporation in Detroit. That became Daimler Chrysler and Fiat Chrysler. I retired in 2013. I moved west because it's where my kids and my grandkids are. A year ago, I had no intention of doing this, but a year ago we didn't have Donald Trump in the White House. Well, now we do, and sitting there looking at what's going on in the country, it's simply a matter I can't spend the rest of my days playing golf and guitar. I need to do something so that my grandkids could say someday, Papa, you did the right thing. What I envision for the district, and this is my entire focus, because in our district, we have 6 of the poorest counties in the entire state of Oregon. We have, those incomes are less than $15,000 a year. We have no infrastructure out there. I'm proposing building highways from Ashland out to Harney and then due north, and then an interconnector from Ontario across the Cascades over to the 5. As the Labor Department says, if we can build infrastructure, we can bring companies. We bring companies that bring jobs. We have to tell people, lumber is dead. It's never coming back. We did 7 billion feet in 1955. We did about 90 million last year. It's 1.3%. The pony's dead. We have to look for new ways for people to make a living. 30 seconds. So when I have somebody out in Burns say, Tim, I don't want my children to have to move away. I said, yes, ma'am, I totally understand that. But Taco Bell is not a career choice. If we don't bring jobs into this district, and we bring it by infrastructure spending, and then we bring it, and by the way, we're going to need, after the companies are located here, we're going to need the solar. Everybody's going to talk about that. But you need the electrical grids. All right, so we'll talk about a few more of those things as we get the opportunity this evening. Again, thank you very much for...
Okay, great. Hi, thank you very much. My name is Eric Burnett. I am, first, I would like to thank the Hood River and Wasco County Dams for doing this. This is important. It's really good to have all of this going on so early in the cycle. I live in Hood River. I've been a long-time Hood River County resident, was a member of the volunteer fire department, and if you've ever been to Children's Park, every one of those darn donor boards, I engraved those. A little bit about myself. I'm a California Maritime Academy graduate. I worked as a ship's officer for a number of years and came ashore and spent the last 10 years of my life working on projects, on infrastructure projects that are used anytime any grain gets exported on deep draft vessels out of the colony. Spent the last few years of my career as executive director of the Oregon Board of Maritime Pilots, which all sounds very fancy. Basically, we were the DMV for the ship pilots. Here's why I'm running. Greg Walden is working for Donald Trump. At the end of the day, that's really what's going on here. The straw that broke the camel's back for me was watching Greg Walden write that legislation that would have put 20 or 30 or 40,000 of his own constituents off of health care. No alternative. They would have been sicker. Some of them would have lost homes. There would have been medical bankruptcies and probably some deaths as a result. He offered no alternative. In no universe is that acceptable. That's what finally drove me to run. There are a number of other issues as well. I look at the assault that is going on by the Republicans against the middle class, and wherever Walden has the opportunity to do the right thing by working class folks or by unions, he does something else. This is not okay. This is just not okay. I'm going to wind up now. I've only got a couple more seconds here. I'm seeing fingers going up in front of me. I'm at 10 seconds, so I'm just going to say thank you very much, and thank you to everybody else here. This is hard work, I know, because I'm doing it, and so is everyone else.
Good evening. My name is Mike Byrne, and I'm from the Dalles. Thank you very much. My college education was spent on Porchy Wheaton Cattle's Ranch, where I spent 4 years hauling hay, building fence, moving cattle around, planting, everything. Okay, before that, well, what I'm trying to say is I work for a living. That's all I've ever done. My first job in the Dalles was mowing lawns. I delivered paper, I pulled rye in the wheat fields. And people are wondering, why are you running? I mean, why am I running? I'm not a college graduate. We've got to do something different. I mean, really different. Just not kind of different, really different. So we get someone in there that represents the working class, somebody that knows what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck, have kids going to public school here. Those long bus rides in District 2, if there's anything that brings kids in District 2 together, it's them all ride the bus for a long time. And, okay, so my kids go to college on Pell Grants. But I have a life of public service. I'm just not, I'm not making this up. Okay, so I taught skiing for 35 years. I've taught thousands of people how to ski. I was a ski coach here at the Dallas High School. I've got 3 seconds. Can anyone tell I'm not a politician? I'm not a lawyer. But I think you can tell that here's a guy that's going to represent the people of this district, because I am this district. I've worked in every job that's available here. All of them. Thank you very much.
I'm Jim Prairie, and when I ran in 2016, I never had a crowd this big. And this is a year out before the election, so I'm really excited to see so many people so involved. In 2 minutes, you don't get a chance to say too much, but let me just hit a few high points. And what I want to do is, I tried to hand out my card to everybody. If you have a question later, give me a call, check out my website. But let me just, a few of my high points. I had a year of college and then I enlisted in the Army for 2 years. I'm a Vietnam-era veteran. I live in Southern Oregon, outside of Ashland. And on my card, I say, don't criticize unless you have a better idea. And I take that to heart. If I don't have a better idea, or what I think is a better idea, I keep my mouth closed. But there's a lot of things that are happening today that I think there's a much better idea. If you go to my website, what I'm trying to do is be solution focused. I don't like to just say, oh, there's so much government waste, and then not tell you what I would actually cut. I'll tell you what I'll actually cut. Go to my website, check it out, give me a call, ask me a question. And I put my phone number on my card for a very specific reason. I want to answer questions. And when people call me, I think they're always kind of surprised to get a live voice on the other end, because they're expected to get into some kind of a long queue where you press 6 and 7 and all that other stuff. But thank you so much. It's kind of hard to answer questions in 1 minute increments, but we're going to try tonight. But give us an opportunity to expand upon those questions and really fully answer your questions. So thank you so much.
All right. Okay, yeah, just a word of caution not to step in front of the speakers or you will get feedback. It's just a heads up for that. You're welcome to stand if you want. They juggle, do tricks, whatever goes on. All right, now we're going to start our questions. We're going to start next one down. So Ross is going to be the start, and each question will move down one for the first one. Everybody gets a chance to answer the question, so you can get there, tell the differences between them all. And everybody gets a chance to be first, and everybody gets a chance to listen to everybody else and then respond. So it's kind of a fair thing all the way around. First question. The first subject is healthcare. We have 2 questions on healthcare. And the first question is, more general, what is the biggest challenge to healthcare in District 2? 1 minute each. Start with Ross. Don't start counting until he starts talking. But you can't take all night either. So.
Okay. I think one of the biggest problems that I have with healthcare is decoupling it from my work. When it is attached to my work, I'm chained to that work and I can't move on to other explorations of being, it reduces my flexibility. And we really need to focus on addressing the issue. That phone is really, oh, okay. Okay, what we really need, sorry. Okay. Okay, what's really critical is that we cut the healthcare costs in half by reducing by health insurance, by getting rid of health insurance companies, regulating doctors, procedures, and prescription costs. That way we get it down to the 50% and our per capita. So thank you very much. Sorry about that.
the ACA was passed, 130,000 people in our district were able to get their insurance through the subsidies, another 30,000 directly through the exchanges. That wasn't the end of the story. We've got about 2,500 people that were able to then get employment because it opened up additional medical jobs out in the field. At the same time, we have 32 rural hospitals throughout the entire state. Most of those hospitals were operating at about $1.1 million in the red. After the ACA was passed, almost every one of them is now running about 900,000 to the good. So what that means is that they're not going to go out of business. Somebody that gets a heart attack in Burns doesn't have a 2.5-hour drive to St. Charles and Bend. This is what we need to maintain their insurance, to maintain the jobs, and maintain the health coverage in the districts where we're in the counties where they live.
Okay, the biggest challenge that we're facing in Oregon too is the same one we're facing all over the nation. There's a litmus test in healthcare, and it's not Medicare, it's universality and usability. Everybody has to get healthcare, and it has to be usable. It's just that simple. If we're not keeping problems out of the emergency room that can be dealt with in a doctor's office, we are failing. It's the same problem here as everywhere else. That's the big problem. It's universality.
The difference between Medicare and Medicaid, when I turned 65, I understood now what Medicare is about because I'm eligible. It just takes my whole Social Security check to pay for the supplementals. But Medicaid, that's the Oregon Health Plan. Here is the big problem we have in this district, drugs. Who pays for drug treatment? Who pays for beds? If you have a family member, if there's drugs, none of you have problems with drugs, do you? None of your kids, nobody you know, your nieces and nephews? Okay, Medicaid pays for treatment. And if it's all cut, like Greg Walden's bill does, what's going to happen? There's no beds, there's no place for these people to go. It's a huge problem. I hope none of you ever learn anything about it.
To me, the biggest problem with healthcare in Congressional District 2 is affordability. If you look at all the different counties, the 20 different counties that make up Congressional District 2, about 30% of the people that live in Congressional District 2 are on the Oregon Health Plan. That's Medicaid. So, but for the fact that under the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid was expanded, those people wouldn't be able to afford health care. And what did Greg Walden want to do? He wanted to take health care away from 64,000 people. That's about 1 out of 10 people in this district that would have been without health care if what Greg Walden wanted had become law. So we need to keep the Affordable Care. Actually, I'm in favor of Medicare for all. That to me is what makes the most sense. So thank you much.
Thanks. The biggest problem in rural areas is access in rural areas because setting up a sufficient range of services when they're limited clients has been a real challenge in rural communities. Cost, which Jim mentioned, is another big one, and concerns about, and I've talked to folks who feel like they can't afford or they're caught in between the requirement to pay and the challenge of paying. Two other things, because healthcare impacts other things, so it does impact, the comment was made earlier, thank you, the comment was made earlier about impact on when someone gets sick, there's an impact on the finances, family farms that are going on the market, so that families can be cared for, family members can be cared for. The other is housing. So for folks who are struggling with opiate addiction, once they get their treatment, they need to move on and get the housing necessary to move them beyond. And so there's other challenges beyond healthcare alone that we're facing. And it's really a mix of services to make sure that we're providing a full range of needs or meeting needs.
Nice job, everyone. Keep up the excellent work. We really appreciate the short and responsive answers. But for the second question in these first three series, we're going to turn to Kathy for an in-depth question.
Yes, congratulations, you have won the election. And you are now chairman of committee that's going to be talking about healthcare, and it's January 2019. Okay, so I'm setting the stage for you. So what would be your priority for funding for healthcare?
The two biggest components of healthcare, first is pharmaceuticals. It accounts for about 20% of your total cost. Hospitalization is another 32%. Okay, the first thing we need to do is go after the pharmaceuticals. When they cut the Part D deal to get Part D in, the agreement was we would leave the pharmaceuticals pricing alone. The top 10 healthcare drugs in this country are 2 to 10 times as higher if you go across the river in Detroit, where I used to live, into Ontario. That's wrong. We're going to go after the pharmaceuticals, highest priority that I have.
If I'm sitting in front of that committee, again, it's got to be universality. If we don't all have health care, then we have failed. That's the litmus test. That's the priority. There's another one that I would want to add in too. If you're a veteran, you put your hand up, you're sworn in, you get health care. You get VA benefits regardless of your discharge. Honorable or not. If you get your foot blown up, you get medical benefits. If you get your psyche blown up, we can call it PTSD, guess what? You get benefits too. They're both combat insurance. That's one that I would work for.
The biggest problem in getting to universality, Medicare for all, single payer, is the private health insurance plans that most people in this country are on. How are we going to transition? So the first thing I would do in committee is make sure we've got these companies that are providing good insurance. Now, how many people are trapped in a job that has health insurance? You can't leave this job because it pays, that's where you're getting your health insurance. So, okay, that's what we've got to do. Somehow we've got to bring the private insurance companies that provide insurance already for all the employer plans and find a way to fold them into a system. There's going to be upheaval. It's going to take at least 10 years. But it's got to start with dealing with the private insurers that are already insuring over half the people in this country. We can't do anything without them.
It's a little repetitious, but the first thing on my agenda would be starting to talk about Medicare for all. Let's start having congressional hearings on it. Let's figure out how we can achieve it. The next thing would be just like Tim, talk about Medicare Part D. Under George W. Bush, when they passed that, they said, hey, guess what? Federal government, you cannot directly negotiate drug prices. Well, the federal government also buys drugs under the VA and under Medicare, or under Medicaid, pardon me. And under Medicaid and under the VA, the federal government pays substantially lower prices for the same drugs. It's about, I see anywhere from $15 to $50 billion subsidy to the drug companies under Medicare Part D. You talk about low-hanging fruit, that's touching the ground. Thanks.
So you mentioned financial priority, but you didn't say whether to cut or to provide. So given that our healthcare industry is listening through our economy, to cut, I agree with the pharmaceuticals. That's the first place to go. To provide, it now becomes an issue of asking the experts. And a doctor in Klamath Falls told me that he thought, especially for poor communities, the number one priority is general practice.
Reality is we are long ways away from Medicare for all, mainly due because of the strength that pharmaceuticals and medical have in Washington. So we have to work in, okay, what is really feasible? Let's make ACA work by expanding Medicaid. Let's roll that, first introduce it to Medicaid for 55 and older. Start walking it back slowly, and it'll be a slow progression to walking to Medicare for all. And we can also address doctors' expenses by looking at creating an insurance program for them. So when we are ready to cut their fees, half of their cost is medical malpractice insurance. We can tack that onto FDIC, and that they greatly reduce their expenses of medical insurance, so they're willing to pull down their prices, making healthcare more affordable. Thank you.
Okay, again, nice job. We are going down to our second big category, immigration and deportation. And we're doing a general question first, and then we'll go to more specific with the Kathy will be asking. This is the real general question. Again, remember where you are and get a chance to write the policy. What would it look like? What would your immigration policy look like?
It wouldn't be mean-spirited at the core. It would not be a mean-spirited policy. Are there any Native Americans in the room? Okay, well, everybody else here is an immigrant. Okay, and let's at least use that as the starting point. It would not be mean-spirited. We have an economy right now that is growing at 3%. We have unemployment that is phenomenally low. We are really dependent on immigrant labor. We just are. And I think we need to figure out a way to incorporate that in, bring in immigrant labor as appropriate to our needs, and allow people to come and go more freely and more reasonably. I think that's really what needs to happen. And that's what the rest of the world has tried to do, and successfully more so, I would say, in most European nations recently. That's a good model to follow.
It was back in the late 80s when Ronald Reagan was president. He actually got it right. We had a similar issue, only then they said there were 3 million people here illegally. So, and now they say there's 11, but nonetheless the framework already is in place. If you could prove that you've been here for 5 years and your employers gave you the documentation, you could then get a green card. And there was a path to citizenship. I mean, this worked well. There were 2.7 million people that got their legal papers based on Ronald Reagan's plan. And I know I had something to do, well, I had nothing to do with it really, but the legalization of Good River, I volunteered every Tuesday. I'd come down and help file just because something, you know, they needed some help. It's all in place. We just have to have the will to do it. We can't scapegoat immigrants. I think that's what the whole process has been with the Republican platform, Donald Trump in particular. The process is there to bring people into the mainstream.
That's time, thanks.
Again, I'm solution-based, and if you go to my website, there's 3 steps that I would lay out on immigration. I don't have time in 1 minute to go through them all, but I do have time to tell you how I came up with that. I had come up with an idea, and I ran it by an undocumented couple in Hood River, and the woman gave me some really good feedback. And with her feedback, I went back and made some tweaks and some changes, and then I ran it by her again, and she said yes. So I ran it by an undocumented couple, and they said it was a good idea. My plan is deal with the existing situation, but also deal with it in a way that takes care of it in the future so we don't keep repeating it. In 1986, I think under Reagan, they took care of the immediate problem, but they didn't take care of it from reoccurring again. And with my 3 steps, which I'm happy to talk about when I have a little more time, I think that they will be taken care of. So, thank you.
Thank you. I believe we need to reform our immigration system to provide a path to citizenship for those who have contributed to our communities and economies. Folks are talking about our friends, neighbors, co-workers. They pay taxes, their kids go to school with our kids. It's not an us and them, it's an us issue. This is good for the character of our nation. We are a nation of immigrants. We also believe in basic issues of justice and these other things that are so true to our Constitution. It's good for our ag industry and our economy. It reduces fear and bullying in schools, which we're seeing now and have since the election. And it creates safer communities by encouraging positive engagement with our law enforcement officers. We need to bring folks in and work together with our friends and neighbors and to provide a fair path to citizenship for those who have contributed and been a part of our communities for so long. We are a nation of laws, but we should be a nation of fair laws.
I would be looking at creating a new H-2C visa, one that can be given to all undocumented immigrants, so they get documented, so they get into the system. It's for their entire family. It lasts for 8 years for them to be able to take the time to transition and file for citizenship. And that way, we can keep the immigrants paying and supporting with their efforts, because they are responsible for over $500 billion worth of GDP. They are viable, they are worthy, and we need to give them a pathway to citizenship. Thank you.
When's the last time anybody heard Tyson Foods, Purdue Farms, Hormel, see anything in the paper about them being fined for hiring illegal immigrants? Never. There's 11 million undocumented folks in the country. 10 million of them get up and go to work every day. They were brought here by our own inadequate and wrong policies for the last 40 years. There's 3.5 million of them in the Central Valley of California for a reason. And by the way, they will tell you that they pay $2 to $3 above minimum wage in both the Central Valley and Napa, and that yet 9 out of 10 are foreign-born and 50% are illegal. Americans won't do this work. Okay, what I would do, anybody here over 5 years, automatic path to citizenship, you would be immediately given a documentation that says you can work, and the first time somebody finds one at Tyson without that certificate, it's a $100,000 ticket, no questions asked.
Okay, so you've answered a question about immigration, which is about folks coming into the country. So now I'd like to ask you about what would be your priorities for deportation.
What a great question. There's been a lot said about, well, I'm not going to repeat what Donald Trump said, but deportation, you know what? I don't really believe that all the Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers. I really don't. But I also believe that we're a nation of laws. If you guys know where Northport is, many of you have come here for the indivisible. Okay, 1 minute is not enough. I'll just apologize because I can't talk that much in 1 minute. But let me tell you this. ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has got a contract with our local county jail here, 5 counties, and there's a hunger strike going on out here in Northport at noon tomorrow, 1 o'clock, there's going to be a demonstration. I hope that everyone can join me out there because it's unbelievable.
That's time, sorry.
1 minute is not enough.
We agree.
I'm just getting started.
We encourage everyone to talk to these people afterwards in depth. They will stay, I know they will, because they're passionate and will be happy to share with you in groups or individually. But we have so many people and so many things we have to keep moving. Sorry about that.
Talk about deportation. First of all, dreamers, absolutely not. They are Americans in everything except paperwork. And they should be made Americans absolutely with the paperwork in place. Next, if somebody has committed a felony or multiple gross misdemeanors, yes, they should be deported. They came here to work, they came here to improve their lives, and if they have committed a crime, that's fair to deport. Everyone else, I would absolutely provide a path to citizenship because, again, they're basically Americans. They've been here, they've worked here, they've raised their families here, they pay taxes. They're the kind of people that I would like to have as a fellow American. Thanks.
First and foremost, treat folks with dignity, and the Northport thing is I encourage everyone to follow up on that as well. The second is also, I agree on the DACA, dreamers are Americans. I think we should recognize that. But we should have a vetting process, not one that terrorizes families, but one that looks at whether there's a criminal record, and I think that should be a disqualifier and a requirement. If it's a serious, not a simple moving ticket or something, it's actual serious crime, felony. And then also looking at things like paying taxes. If we've had someone who's been paying taxes for years, that should be factored into consideration, and they've been contributing to our economy and to our communities. And so we should have a vetting process we look through, but it's not something like our current process that essentially terrorizes families, and it should be something that treats people with dignity and allows us to go through a process that makes a distinction between whether they are have been showing a record and practicing and being part of our country and effective part of our country, or they are having a negative impact, and then that would then be an argument for deportation.
One thing that I'd like to focus on is revisiting Just Soleil and to see if we can stop them coming in. Just Soleil is relating to babies being born in America, anchor babies pretty much. Should we strengthen the analysis of people when they fly in here, because it's a big problem with China coming over, having their baby born here, and then getting citizenship for that baby. And I believe that we should revisit this and see about limiting this and to say, change Just Soleil so the person has one parent that is a U.S. citizen. And that way we'll stop the deportation coming in and having that issue. Thank you very much.
I always like to point out that every time I hear Trump talking about the wall, I think he must have failed geography. It's a 2,000-mile border in which 1,600 is made up of the Rio Grande and the Pecos River. So unless we're going to cede those rivers to Mexico, I don't know where he's going to build his wall. But with that said, what I mentioned earlier, anybody that can prove they've been here 5 years or longer, which totally takes care of all the DACA folks, okay, should have immediately a certificate that says you're authorized to be here. What will be then the format for allowing them to have permanent citizenship? I think that still needs to be worked out. But as far as people that have been here a shorter than time, no, I'm not for open borders. I've traveled all over this planet. Every country that I ever went to had rules and regulations that allowed me to go in and come out. There's no reason why the United States can't put workable policies in place to do the same thing as the rest of the countries on the planet.
There's a lot said that's been said up here that I agree with, and I don't want to repeat a lot of it. I would just like to add one simple thing, though. Jails are for violent people. We have for-profit family jails for deportation. That is wholly unacceptable. That is completely and totally unacceptable. We don't need to jail families. This is just, this is a deportation situation that is just deeply offensive to me.
All right, topic number 3, the fun topic of federal land management. Oh boy. So our first question is, gentlemen, what is the proper role of government in federal land management in Oregon? It's a pretty well wide open area. Jim's first up this time.
When I ran last time, I went over to Harney County and I met with Steve Grasney, who was the county judge in Harney County, and we talked about the occupation. And he said the occupiers came to the wrong county. He said they came to the wrong county because in Harney County, they have this thing called the High Desert Partnership, which is a collaboration, and where the locals get to sit down with the feds, the BLM and the Forest Service. Locals get to be heard, they get to have their, input into the situation, and it works. So I'm for collaborations, and I'm also for not giving land to the counties and to the states. The states and the counties do not have the financial wherewithal to manage the lands properly, and they would look at it as an opportunity to raise cash in a short-term way, and all of a sudden, public lands would no longer be public. Thanks.
agree that public land is public and belongs to the public. The role of the government in public land management is to help maintain the sustainable use of our lands. So for instance, our forests should be thinned and managed to protect us from wildfires, protect air quality, and provide ongoing jobs, but should not be clear cut. Greg Walden. And the sustainable practice, so even on grazing and ranching, those are long-term viable uses that we've had in our state going back for generations. And the government's role is to ensure that we can continue with some of those practices. We can protect lands that have sensitive species and provide those protections, but also allow us to utilize our natural resources in a sustainable manner.
Totally agree with Jamie. It's about sustainability. You look at what they're doing down in Harney with sustainable grazing. They're doing 3 days on and 13 months off on grazing. I can see the BLM enforcers working that throughout all of the grazing areas and getting into the forest and doing what needs to be done by selective harvesting, mechanical mulching, and prescribed burns. It's all about sustainability. And that is what I believe that the BLM and the Forest Service should be doing in our public lands. Thank you.
To get a better understanding of this, I went to our famous state website and printed off 19 of what we call the goals and guidelines of public land use in the state of Oregon. It reminded me back when I was working in Detroit. We used to say where there's things that we can do, and when we don't want to do it, we quote rules. It seemed like a repeat. I believe that public land should be looked at from a common sense point of view. If there are areas that we want to keep as pristine for the generations to come, then those things should be marshaled off and not allowed. There are things that we need to use public land. If we're going to develop things in the district, if we're going to bring in companies, if we're going to do roads, we're going to have to make some accommodation to allow these things if we want to bring this district out of the 1950s and put it into the 21st century. As I like to say, on equal footing with those counties on the west side of the Cascades.
Hazards of that when you're last. You find yourself agreeing with a lot of what's been said. Public land stay public, public land stay federal. Everybody from Maupin to Manhattan has been paying for these lands for years. They belong to all of us. They need to stay that way. One point that I would like to raise is that having been a volunteer firefighter and with having been trained in shipboard firefighting, we are seeing fire behavior that is just wicked scary. We've never seen this stuff before. I think public lands policy is going to have to shift to defensible space around communities and not just individual structures. Ashland has already done this and done a pretty good job of it, actually. That's a priority shift that is going to have to occur.
I'm going to have to say that I agree with everybody, but here's what I'm going to say. I think public lands should be left alone. How's that for a radical departure? Sure, economic resources, it's tremendous. Over half the land in this district is owned by the federal government. It needs to be available to all of us, equal protection under the law. But having said that, I like to leave it alone for the most part. I mean, did I just lose the election? I can't help it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, since you're all in the Dows here tonight, and thank you for coming, I want to... Everything okay? Are we in the right order? I know. It's just the way it works out. You get to be the first again. Okay, so we're all in the Dallas again. Thank you for coming. I'm going to now ask you a question about what we kind of consider our backyard here. So, what is your understanding of the issues facing the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area?
Well, one of the issues we just we're talking about wildfires and the impact, obviously, we saw from this past summer, and the potential concerns. So there's impact from wildfires, there's threats to it. There's also water issues and how much water can be taken from the Columbia River, and that's part of the agreements that are going on. There's also aesthetic issues, so there's opportunities for wind farms, but there's also some folks who don't like the aesthetics of them, and it's one of the folks in La Grande are going a little bit further south. So there are issues of protecting the resource. There are issues of concerns with the coal trains going through or coal going through and potential impacts to the river and the other communities. And economic development is always huge, so especially with impacts of forest fires. So I have concerns about making sure there's economic development for the area. And there's a potential for tourism that then is part of the economic development, but that also helps provide the resources to manage to take care of the community.
I'd really like to focus on K through 12 education, to tell them how delicate our forests are, how easy it is to drop a smoke bomb and blaze up the whole entire forest. This has got to be drilled into them how such a natural resource can be taken away so quickly and scarred for so long. This has got to be driven home. This is what I would like to do to support and educate the K through 12 and other people about how delicate exactly our forests are. Thank you.
I have two issues for this neck of the woods. The first one is when you go east of here and you have a 70,000 cow corporate farm out there. Now, and then we just permitted a 30,000. Does anybody know that that 70,000 cow produces 7 million pounds of poo 7 days a week? Okay? I'm sorry, Governor Brown, it was a mistake to issue that second permit. We should shut these two down. I have no problems with farmers and ranchers, but we don't, that's a different thing from corporate agriculture. The second thing, I find absolutely nothing aesthetic about those 4 major hydro dams out on the Columbia River. I'd like to see those dams removed. We're talking about solar power, and if we're talking about solar power, we can use that to replace the hydroelectricity that we would lose. And we all know that the other benefits we'll receive from removing those dams.
Okay, so here we're going to see a little bit of a difference here. One of the issues that is going to be facing us coming forward is a renegotiation of the Columbia River Treaty. Okay, part of that involves increasing peak flows, allowing increased peak flows in the Columbia to 650,000 cubic feet per second at the Dalles Dam over there. Now, that is going to be difficult for the river system to manage, and even more difficult for the dams to manage. We do need to bear in mind, though, that this Dumb River here exports 2.4 times as much wheat as the Mississippi, and in fact, in 2015, exported 49.3% of all the wheat that is exported from the United States. We feed Asia out of this river, and we can get rid of the dams, but we have to figure out another way to get that wheat to market. That's got to be part of the discussion, too.
So driving up here from Hood River this morning, I passed a coal train. They're all on the other side. Burlington Northern brings them up. The oil trains traveling on this side of the river, and of course we had a fire here in Mosier. I mean, how could... Does luck have anything to do with this? I mean, I was working in the Dalles. I was trying to get home to Parkdale when I could see the black smoke from here. How? It was like 100 yards from the school. And then the coal trains, there's never any huge explosion, but the dust just blows off. Did you know that you can't have a certified organic farm if you're within a mile of the railroad tracks? It's like, okay, the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area has been a tremendous benefit for tourism. I mean, we are totally blessed, and all the towns are cashing in on it, with the exception of the Dalles and Cascade Locks. But we're getting there. 10 seconds. Did you say 10 minutes? Because I'm just getting started. Anyway, I'm blessed to live here. I've lived here most of my life, and thank you all for coming.
I'm going to have to repeat. I go with Jamie. It's the forest and the fire danger. It's the coal trains. It's the oil trains. And like Mike, I was actually on I-84 that day that the Mosier derailment was. I got routed over to the Washington side, and I could see the black smoke from the Washington side. But that gets back to how we're going to get off of fossil fuels. And as far as I'm concerned, we need to get off yesterday. I'm in favor of a carbon tax, but as long as we have the need for fossil fuels, as long as people are driving cars that use gas and diesel, those trains are going to keep running. And so what to me would be beautiful would be everybody driving an electric vehicle that's been charged with renewable energy. Thanks.
That's all right. We'll talk here about ourselves, so no problem. Pay no attention to the people behind the curtain here. Okay, here comes our sneaker question. This is designed to test your ability to think on your feet, and unfortunately, Roger gets to be first. Are you ready, ladies and gentlemen?
You betcha.
Ready to rumble. All right. Does the current tax system need to be reformed, and if so, how?
Man, when
And if not, why not?
No, I'd love to address corporate tax. As a business owner, any of us a business owner? As a business owner, I have a creative accountant. I know how to make it so my taxes are low. In other words, so what I would like to do is focus on changing corporate tax on the gross income. That way you can't play the shell game of hiding your corporate profits. By making it on gross income, we can generate over $1.2 trillion more in revenue. And that will greatly help us working folk to pay our bills. So we have to focus on rewriting the corporate tax code, and that's what I'd like to do. Thank you.
My campaign's based on 4 core values. Number 2 is called the inequality of wealth and income in the United States, where 10% of the people of this country own 76% of the wealth. They don't have it all tied up in houses and yachts. Most of it is in equity. So by cutting the tax rates from 35 to 20% to corporations that are currently sitting on $5.5 trillion, not passing down this into wages for the last 10, 15 years, not investing in the assets they should have been doing is obscene. So I would have left the thing at 35%. I'm hoping the Republicans get another L for them in the loss column, so that when I get a chance to get there, I would maintain it at 35%. Because it's fair. They use our infrastructure, they use our publicly educated kids, they use our environment, they use our resources. 35% is more than fair for operating in the greatest economic engine in the world.
Okay, I guess simply what I would like to say is that what is being proposed right now is a tried and true Republican formula. A rising tide lifts all mega yachts. It's going to work. That one will work that far. Where do we go from here? I think you close every single corporate loophole you can that does not directly benefit employees or people. I think that's really pretty simple. If it benefits the corporation, I think you have to look very carefully as to why it exists and how it exists. I think there's just no other choice. Other than that, I think there's another factor here too, and that is that we need to take a close look at how we enforce corporate laws in general. Our fiduciary laws allow corporations to get away with things that if they were people, oh wait, there are people now. If they were people, they couldn't. Corporations mess up, you start clawing back stock, and you start clawing back stock options.
Tax policy has got to be based on creating revenue for government services, needed services. It shouldn't be handouts to wealthy people that don't need it. I think we should raise the taxes. It's a class, we all knew this. This is a meme that goes all around Facebook. It starts over every 6 months. When the tax rate was 90%, we really had a vibrant economy. But here's the thing about a 90%, you're looking at me crazy, right? Well, listen to this. That's on net income. Go ahead and invest all the profit you made. Take your gross profit and pay higher wages. Invest in infrastructure in your company. Pay higher wages, more benefits, new equipment, so you don't make any money. But that money's not piling up $5 billion, $5 trillion somewhere. Okay, so then it's your choice. I'm either going to pay my employees or I'll pay the government. Your choice.
I am not opposed to reforming the tax structure, but not the way the Republicans want to do it. They want to run a $1.5 trillion deficit so they can give more cuts to the wealthy and to corporations. That's not the way you do it. Yes, lower income and middle income, yes. Expand the child tax credit. They're doing it. That's good. Expand earned income tax credit. They're not doing that, but they should. They want to get rid of the estate tax. That affects about 0.03% of the people in this country. Keep it. You know what? They can afford it. They call it a death tax, and all that is marketing. Corporate taxes, I think they could be reduced, but if you reduce them, get rid of the deductions and the credits, because right now there's enough deductions and credits that GE, probably one of the biggest corporations in all of the United States, paid no income taxes a couple of years ago. Come on, you know what? Get rid of the deductions, credits. You can reduce the rate and still get a lot more in income. Thanks.
Yes, we should reform. And first of all, taxes are not bad. They're the way we invest and take care of our community and build our infrastructure. So taxes alone can be very good, but there currently is a bias for big business and corporations that needs to change. There's a disadvantage for family businesses. We need to create more incentives for investments. I agree with that idea, and penalties for offshoring, so we keep more of our base locally. For our ag community, I'd actually like to see a 2-year rolling tax system so that for industries who are dependent on the weather can sustain through a bad year. So the 2-year rolling cycle, that would help to not drive family farms out of business if they had a bad year. And also see more incentives and relief for students and families to relieve education debt to encourage investment in education.
Okay, we're going to come up with closing statements in just a moment, but first, a reminder. Good catch. If you like a particular candidate, and I suspect there's some of them that are going to shine for you, remember, you must be registered Democrat to vote in the primary for them. You have plenty of time to do that. 1 minute closing on that, and so, Tim, I guess you're up for this first of the
As I said a year ago, I had no intention of doing this. The only involvement in politics I'd had before was I helped Gary Peters become a congressman in Michigan, and then he is now the junior senator from Michigan. My wife and I were very active in that campaign. This is not something I want to do. This is something I feel I need to do. I want my kids and my grandkids someday to look back and go, Papa, you helped push that pendulum back from the right, and we've been making progress ever since. If you like my message, please check out the website. I have some flyers afterwards that I'll hand out. I call it my rants and raves on the website. There's 14 issues that have done a lot of research, and it really tells you where I'm coming from. I consider myself a very progressive Democrat, but also somebody with a very common sense point of view. There's only 145,000 of us in this district. We need 100,000 Republicans or independents to come support one of us if we're going to take Walden out of the office, okay? So we can't just think all progressive ideals. We have to work with these people and share a value that they will appreciate and realize that we're all in this together.
Okay, so the first thing I would like to do is thank everybody for coming. I really appreciate that folks are here and paying attention. The next thing I would like to do is thank the other folks up on the stage here. This is going to turn out well. We've got 7 people running. What's going to happen is one of us is going to unseat Walden, and the other 6 of us are going to be in elected office somewhere else in this district by 2020. This is nothing but good. This is binge. This is binge. We have to have it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did I tell you I was from the Dells? Greg Walden is from the Dells. He was born here. He went to Dry Hollow grade school. Does he ever mention that? He forgot where he's from. Not just the Dalles, but District 2. You know, the Dalles is actually, it is District 2. It's a scrappy little town. You know, it's not Bend, it's not Hood River, it's not Ashland. This is the kind of town that needs a representative. We don't have a representative in Washington. We haven't had one for a long time. Okay, I'm prepared to represent this district because I understand what it's like. This is it. Greg Walden has no idea, and I do have an idea, and I want to thank all my people up here. I mean, I've become really good friends with these folks, and thanks for coming to the Dalles. And thank all of you for coming and listening to us. I think between us, we're going to take Walden out. He's done.
When I ran last time, my primary issue was campaign finance reform because I tie everything back to the money. I look at why do we have Medicare Part D, and the pharmaceuticals give millions of dollars to these guys. And I am so sick and tired of people getting elected and representing their campaign contributors instead of their constituents. And that's what I'm going to change. I want to represent the people in Congressional District 2, not the big campaign contributors. And therein, I'm taking money only from individuals. So when people when I'm in DC and someone comes into my office, I'm going to say, hey, where do you live in Congressional District 2? And if they say, well, I'm a lobbyist, I'm going to say, go pound sand. Thanks.
Thanks to all of you here today. You're really what's going to make the difference. People coming out and showing the passion for this race. So thank you. Thanks to our moderators, the hosts, my colleagues, and to our families who are here. Do want to mention I also have materials. My website is mcleodskinner.com. I do ask for your support because it's going to mean winning the primary for one of us and then going on to win the general. And this is a winnable race. I also want to make a point about building the pipeline, which is really critical. You have a phenomenal woman on City Council who's going to be running for the state rep seat, I believe. We need to build up the pipeline not for congressional races, but also for local races and state races as well. So please look out for her and support her as well. Because we are also running against each other, just want to mention that some of the things that distinguish my campaign is I have run before and won. I've served in elected office for 8 years. I'm a lifelong Democrat and was also a union member for 10 plus years. And that's experience that I bring to it. I've also worked, when I was in law school, worked as part of NALSA, the Native American Law Student Association, and worked a lot with tribes. There's tribal issues throughout the district, and that's a real focus for, again, the us part of our community. So thank you all, and thanks for being here tonight.
We've got a big mission to do. We have to get 50% non-affiliated voters and 20% Republicans on our side voting Democrat to win in 2018. That's reality. 72% of the non-affiliated voters and 96% of the Republicans are Christians. And my mission is to, well, the way I see it is, because of my faith, I'm a Christian Democrat. I see them as Democrats, they just don't know it yet. And I want to spread that message and bring more of them to our side, our way of thinking, of helping the poor, helping the sick, feeding the hungry, and educating the masses. Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, and Lady Ben, all of you have been really spectacular. And I've done these for many, many years in both Hood River and Wasco County and this is probably the best and brightest crew I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yes.